Welcome back to the Go to Go podcast, man. Episode 75, Conference Championships coming up this week in the NFL. Just wrapped up the divisional round, man. This episode, we're going to jump in and break down our season awards, who we think is most deserving for all of the awards, MVP, offensive, defensive, player of the year, rookies, stuff like that. Just as well, we're going to dive into the conference championships and what we thought about the games that just happened over the past week in the divisional round as well, man. Starting it off with the awards, man. MVP, I think it's clear-cut, both of us rocking with the same player here. Going with Lamar Jackson, man. I'm going to go through 67.2% completion percentage, 3,678 passing yards, 24 tutties, 7 picks with a 102.7 passer rating. He had it 821 on the ground, averaging 5.5 yards a carry with 5 touchdowns on the ground as well. So 29 total tutties. Do you want to kind of break it down, LJ's season?
This year was kind of weird. The past couple years we, have Mahomes going for the big numbers. Josh Allen, he's put up some crazy seasons. Even, Jalen Hurts had a really good season last year. We're used to the big explosive offensive, seasons and stuff like that from quarterbacks. But this season, it was kind of weird. In the beginning of the year, everyone's like, okay, it's going to be Holmes. Maybe Hurts has a little bit of buzz. But then, the quarterback play wasn't super, explosive up to what we thought. And then, you started bringing out names like, is it going to be Tyreek, CMC, like all these things. But I think towards the end of the year, it really came down to that Ravens 49ers game. And, Lamar just went out there against Brock Purdy, who was also, getting a lot of hype, who had a really good MVP caliber season himself. But, just watching them on the same field, watching Lamar go against, that great San Francisco defense and watching Purdy against that Baltimore defense, you kind of just, you saw it more than the numbers. Like watching Lamar, what he meant for that team on the field, just his ability to move in the pocket, that threat of running, made Fred Warner look like a fool, broke him out in the open field. And, that's the best linebacker in football. He doesn't miss many tackles. So I just think, it was a little underwhelming this season overall in terms of big performances. But when you watch Lamar, what he's continued to do in the playoffs, the end of the season, and even in the beginning of the season, he's been probably the most consistent quarterback so far. And I just think, the way this season's gone, Lamar, that offense, that next step he's taken as a passer, and we've been saying that all year, this is the best he's looked in the pocket, passing the ball, not looking to run, using his legs to extend plays, not just make plays on the ground. So, I'm right there with you. I think this is definitely Lamar's second MVP. I wouldn't say, it's as impressive or as big as his first MVP when he had all those crazy numbers, but I think as a football player, this MVP really shows the progression and how much better of a quarterback Lamar Jackson has become, not just a pure athlete.
Yeah, you mentioned that Niners game, primetime national television. A lot of people were calling for Brock for MVP. Lamar went out there, handled business, and embarrassed the Niners. So I think that was really the turning point this season as far as MVP conversations. It's going to move us to Offensive Player of the Year. A couple players you could go with here. I'm going to go ahead and go with Tyreek Hill, man. 119 catches, 1,799 yards, 13 touchdowns, averaging 15.1 point yards a catch. And Tyreek could have easily broke 2,000. A lot of drop passes, played banged up most of the year as well. But you look at it, that Dolphins offense is literally nothing without Tyreek Hill. You saw it towards the back end of the season. And even the playoffs, man, the only touchdown they had was Tyreek Hill on a deep route. Without Tyreek Hill, that Dolphins offense just doesn't go. They weren't able to establish anything, dominated all year. Obviously started real hot, cooled off towards the end of the season, kind of opposite of LJ, which is why you might be able to go with a different player in this category, which I'm assuming you probably are, but I'm going to go ahead and mark down Tyreek Hill, Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that at all, man. I mean, Tyreek Hill, his explosiveness, and they literally built the offense around him. That's kind of how it's built in Miami. And The player I picked, Christian McCaffrey, the offense is built around him as well in San Francisco. I mean, over 1,400 rushing yards, his career high in rushing yards this season. Over 500 receiving yards, he hit that 2K total scrimmage yard mark. I believe he also had 21 total touchdowns, led the league, or was tied with Raheem Mostert, 18 rushing touchdowns. So, was the number one running back in terms of rushing yards and touchdowns. And it's another one of those things where it's like, you talk about what Tyreek meant to that Miami offense. I mean, without Christian McCaffrey, this San Francisco offense, does not move the way it does. McCaffrey does so much for this team. They use him in the backfield. They line him up at receiver. He's in the slot. He's a willing blocker. I mean, it's just at this point, we've seen Christian McCaffrey. We know what he can do. Best running back in the league. And when he's in that Shanahan system, the way they use him, I mean, versatile all over the field. You even saw last year in the playoffs against the Eagles, he came in and played emergency quarterback. So in terms of offensive player, there's literally nothing Christian McCaffrey can't do. And I think this year, the way that offense was rolling for the 49ers, literally a safety blanket for Brock Purdy back there on the checkdowns, using the motion, putting him anywhere and everywhere on the field, a nose for the end zone. I think Christian McCaffrey had an outstanding year, so I got him as Offensive Player of the Year.
Moving on, DPOY, man. I'll go ahead with Myles Garrett. Kind of literally not his best season statistically, but his impact definitely was felt out there for the Browns. Finished the season 42 tackles, 33 solo, 14 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 3 passes deflected, 17 TFLs to go along with it. And Myles Garrett's been a cornerstone of the Browns franchise, heart and soul of that defensive line. Thinking back to that Tennessee Titans game where he moved around the line a couple times and the Titans motioned 2 tight ends to go follow him everywhere, force that delay a game. It just shows you how offenses have to treat Myles Garrett, even though stats don't look like it. The amount of double teams. I'm not going to sit here and talk about all the holding calls he never got this year. He's a force to be reckoned with, the way he's able to stop the run as well as rush the passer. A big body on that outside part of the D-line, and he's improved as a run stopper every single year. I think, playing a little bit banged up as well, but MG definitely deserving DPOY. There's some other names up there that could definitely get it as well, but I'm going to go ahead, stick with Myles Garrett on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to be there with you. I mean, your common names were going to be up there. You got the Micah Parsons, the TJ Watts, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa. All of these guys had great years, but, I mean, I'm just rocking with what you said. Sitting here, got the Browns bias rubbing off on me a little bit. But, I mean, athletically, watching him on the field, it's just, coming off the edge, that crazy bend, plus his power. I mean, he just affects the game in so many different ways. And, being that staple, that focal point of that, dominant Browns defense, I just think Myles Garrett is definitely deserving this year.
Yeah, moving on, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Pretty much I think we got this one wrapped up in the bag as well. CJ Stroud, going to go ahead and be my pick. 63.9% completion percentage, 4,108 yards through the air, 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, and 100.8 passer rating if you want to dive in there. You got Stroud.
I do have Stroud as well. I mean, what he was able to do as a rookie coming in at the quarterback position, I mean, it's just unheard of. Besides Andrew Luck, we really haven't seen a rookie quarterback come in and put his team on his back and carry his team. And, Stroud got these guys to a divisional playoff game, got a playoff win. Huge for the Houston Texans, but I don't think you can discuss this category without mentioning Puka Nacua, who I think is a very, very close second. Had arguably, I mean, not even arguably, pretty much had the greatest rookie receiving year ever in NFL history. Over 1,400 receiving yards, 105 receptions, 6 total touchdowns. I mean, I think he is the reason the Rams were as good as they were, because Cooper Kupp, he's the focal point of that offense, that McShay offense. You get that slot receiver, Stafford, his number one guy. Well, you literally just put in Puka Nacua in Cooper Kupp's role when he missed those first few games. And then even down the stretch, he kind of stepped up and took that number one receiver role. And he was the reason Stafford in that offense didn't really miss a beat when they were fully healthy. So I think Puka Nacua brings a little something different to the table from Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp more of that, shifty slot guy getting open with, his routes and his fluidity and his quickness, whereas Puka Nacua, he's, going over the middle. He's catching all those hard passes. He's taking hits and, creating separation with his body and getting open, not as shifty or as quick as Cooper Kupp, but still very strong, great hands. And I think, if it wasn't for C.J. Stroud being an anomaly at the quarterback position and, the most important position in football, I think Puka Nacua is right up there and he's just as deserving. But we all know how, those quarterbacks, they get all the awards.
QB's award.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think both of these guys are, very deserving. And they could do like a co-award, maybe give it to them both. Yeah. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, Stroud, Puka, either way, I'll rock with Stroud just because, the quarterback bias. But I think both of those guys are more than deserving for this award.
Yeah, and the fact the Texans were literally one play away from picking first overall in last year's draft, changed the course of that franchise within, a year, and being able to do that in the NFL is
and
just
both
different.
of these guys stepping up in the postseason as well. Stroud, had that great game against that Browns defense, and, in that wild card matchup against the Lions and the Rams, Puka was, on fire. They really didn't have an answer for him, and, if it wasn't for a ticky-tacky call, could have gone either way. Maybe they got on to the divisional round. So both rookies, offensive rookies, making a big impact for their teams all season and even in the postseason. So 2 great seasons for them guys.
Defensive Rookie of the Year up next, and I'm gonna rock with Will Anderson. Texans Rookie Awards continue. I think the obvious answer here, probably Jalen Carter, but me knowing you're an Eagles fan, just to play sort of the other side here. Will Anderson, 45 tackles on the year, 29 solo, 7 sacks. He only played 15 games. When the Browns, played them the first time in the regular season, there was no pass rush whatsoever. Pressure wasn't getting home. Then you see the Texans in the playoffs match up once again against the Browns. Will Anderson, he was in the backfield all day harassing Joe Flacco. I know they had backup tackles in the game, but even still, the Texans didn't get that pressure when Will Anderson wasn't on the field. You saw the impact he had when he was on the field in the defense and what they were able to do. Will Anderson, definitely a bright future in the league. I'd personally probably give the nod to Jalen Carter, but just had to play the other side here for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Eagles bias, one of the lone bright spots for this, up and down roller coaster, wild Eagles season, I think, is Jalen Carter, getting him at pick 10. He had 6 sacks on the year, 8 TFLs, 2 forced fumbles, and even had a fumble return touchdown against the Cowboys. I mean, for Jalen Carter, what he really does, with defensive tackles, what these guys, what they do really doesn't show up on the stat sheet. When you look at guys like Aaron Donald, when you look at guys like Chris Jones, even, the Jeffrey Simmons of the world, these interior pass rushers that just demand so much attention, they just make it so much easier for the guys around them. And then, that defensive line Philly has, I know it did slow down towards the end of the year, the second half of the season. I think Jalen Carter's impact and, the way he was making plays, even had a blocked field goal on the season as well. Just, doing all the little things and really showed, I think he was really polished as well. Came from Georgia, that entire D-line class, Georgia, greatest defense ever in college football, pumping out a lot of guys. So I think, Jalen Carter's impact wasn't as big on the stat sheet as it was on the field. And then, granted, he did slow down a little bit towards the end of the season. But that's, just a rookie getting adjusted to that NFL life, the NFL schedule, a lot more games, playing a lot harder. But I think Jalen Carter definitely showed more than enough flashes. And I think, for this award, I think it's between him or Witherspoon. I will personally give it. You mentioned Anderson. He made a really strong case. But I just think Jalen Carter's impact from the defensive interior position is just too meaningful. And I think, he gets the nod here in terms of, trying to find these guys that can create pressure from the interior. That's like the biggest thing. The most important thing from defense is to get that pressure really quick on that quarterback from the interior. And I think Jalen Carter has a chance to do that for a very long time in Philadelphia. So I will give him the nod, Eagles bias.
Last up, we're going to do Coach of the Year. I got Kevin Stefanski, man. And once again, Browns bias possibly here. But, just the revolving door, you go through up and down this whole roster. If you told me the Browns would have 11 wins the night Nick Chubb got hurt on Monday Night Football, I would have said, no way. Deshaun Watson goes out for the season. You start 5 different quarterbacks. You lose the heart and soul and identity of the offense in Nick Chubb. Mari Cooper's in and out the lineup. You lose both tackles, season-ending IR, defense banged up. Linebackers out. I think there's 2 healthy linebackers that finished the year. Denzel Ward, yearly injuries, of course, stuff like that. If you told me, their playoff team, Joe Flacco, coming off the couch, leading them, prime time to beat the Jets at home to clinch the divisional or playoff spot, to clinch the wild card, I would have thought you were just straight up lying to me. Is all a dream. Kevin Stefanski definitely did a great job, and I think Joe Flacco fit Stefanski's scheme more. So next season, I would like to see him build off Deshaun Watson being a dual threat quarterback, cater his play style a little better. There's talks, is Stefanski going to be the play caller next year in Cleveland while they're looking for a new offensive coordinator? But hats off to him this year. He did a terrific job just keeping the guys together. When you go down with all those injuries, the locker room maybe starts losing a little bit of hope, a little bit of faith. The Browns didn't flinch. They ended up in the playoffs for the first time 3 years. So credit to Kevin Stefanski, one-time coach of the year with the Browns. I think he is deserving of a second.
Yeah, I'm going to be with you right there with you as well again. I mean, all you had to say is 5 different starting quarterbacks and 11 wins. That's just unheard of. The amount of adversity the Cleveland Browns had to go through this year, like you mentioned, I feel like every week we were on here talking about the injuries, guys going down. It's Nick Chubb, season ending, all those offensive linemen you guys lost, defensive injuries. It was really brutal, but, they found a way, got 11 wins, took the Browns to the playoffs. So, I agree. I don't think there's any way you can give it to anyone else besides Kevin Stefanski. But, you can't mention the guys like DeMeco Ryans who came in with those young guys, got a playoff win, who beat Stefanski. I think he deserves some credit. And then also Shane Steichen over there with the Colts, lost Anthony Richardson and got Gardner Minshew to pretty much, a last drive, a chance to get into the playoffs. They're a very competitive team this year. But, yeah, what the Browns had to go through and everything that was going on this year with Cleveland, I think Stefanski is definitely the lock for Coach of the Year.
All right, man. I didn't even do comeback player of the year. I don't know if you.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see what the NFL's on with that one. So, they try to rewrite the script in the playoffs, did the Bills, but didn't work, man. Fake punt. But pushing on, man. NFC, AFC championship games this weekend. Got some good ones under the belt. I guess we'll kind of cover the games previously while we go through these, or do you want to go through divisional round 2 right now?
We can cover the games last week, divisional round.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Texans, Ravens got the weekend started, man, on Saturday. It was a good start for the Texans, man. First half, they were in the game right where they wanted to be. LJ and the Ravens, they just sort of just woke up in the second half. Maybe the bye week got them a little bit of rust versus rest. But LJ just turned it up in the second half, man, and he went back. He was still throwing the football, but the plays he made with his legs, designed runs in the end zone, the scramble plays he made, it is just unreal. It's vintage Lamar Jackson at its finest, watching him healthy this time of year. Something Ravens fans don't get to see all too often, and they finally are. Seeing what he's capable of, proving he's the franchise guy, MVP frontrunner. The Texans, they just, it was a bittersweet ending to a phenomenal season for him because they definitely had a chance. The offense really, really struggled against this Ravens defense, and it's kind of what you expected the Browns to be the week before. The Ravens just turned it up a notch. You faced literally the 2 best defenses in the NFL back-to-back weeks. Tough task, especially without your favorite receiver, Tank Dell. The ground game was, couldn't get going like they wanted to. And the Ravens, Roquan Smith, all those guys just flying around the field making plays. uh, really had the Texans and had their number for the second half because they put their foot on the gas and just didn't look back after that.
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, it was definitely a competitive game, 10-10 at halftime, but I agree, man. In that second half, that Ravens offense, and I think this game we definitely saw Lamar. I mean, we just gave him league MVP, so I'm not going to say like he was like protecting himself or conserving himself the entire season. But I mean, we didn't really see him have, that rushing ability this year because he really didn't need to. He was able to make all the plays he needed to make. He was able to win the games from the pocket. But, it's the playoffs, man. It's when to go home. You're trying to get that Super Bowl. You kind of bring out that, that trick up your sleeve or that other element that, just is a bag breaker for teams when Lamar gets outside of that pocket, and when he gets in open space, it's like a guaranteed 15 yards. And I mean, he had 100 yards rushing on the ground and a touchdown. So like you mentioned, it's that vintage Lamar Jackson, those crazy highlights we're all used to seeing. Well, now he's able to throw and, make plays in the pocket. And now that, we're in the playoffs and you got to have it, he's kind of, bringing in that other element of that rushing attack. And I mean, I'm not sure how you stop it, but like you said, that Ravens defense also, man, they got guys all over the place. And, I don't even think Marlon Humphrey played this last game, but when you got guys like Kyle Hamilton on the back end and that pass rush, it's just tough. But yeah, I mean, a great year for the Texans. You mentioned, had offense and defensive rookie on their team. So, I mean, and we even mentioned the head coach for coach of the year. But I think the Ravens right now, they see this opportunity. They kind of know that, I mean, if you look on the NFC side, they already beat both of those teams pretty convincingly. So they just got to get through the Chiefs, and they feel pretty good. And, I mean, the way the Ravens are playing right now, all the confidence in the world. You got Lamar Jackson playing the best football of his life. It's just going to be hard for anybody to beat this team. So it was a great game, but I do believe, like you mentioned, second half, Ravens woke up, and the Texans were just outmatched.
Moving on, man, a Saturday night primetime game. I think, possibly the Chiefs-Bills wasn't so good. Game of the postseason, Packers-Niners in that nightcap. The Packers, they looked great, got off to an early lead. Second half, I think the Niners took a 1-point lead. Packers came back, took it. A back-and-forth matchup, obviously. The deciding factor, your offensive player of the year, Christian McCaffrey. And he just became the guy, and they said, here's the ball, go find us a touchdown. He did exactly what they needed at that point. I will say Brock Purdy did it, wasn't the best game of his life, but he managed the game well. And Christian McCaffrey, he just really took over in that second half. He was unstoppable. Packers were trying to find answers for him, and it's tough when you got guys hitting them, and he's just bouncing off tackles. Like, he's not the biggest dude, but he's built strong to bounce off hits and just keep it going, and he did that perfectly. And, Jordan Love, that first pick he threw, bad throw over the middle, tip in the air, and that's the worst thing you want to see as a quarterback. Your receiver tipping the ball in the air leads to a pick, and then obviously trying to go down for that game-winning drive at the end, throwing that cross-body interception, just kind of hoping for a prayer at that point, Love was. And then you could go into the missed field goal that could have, tied the game up or whatnot. But tons of pressure on kickers. You see it week in and week out, and you saw it, in that Chiefs-Bills game we're about to talk about soon. So, name of the game, man, making those kicks, game of inches for sure. Maybe an unreasonable spot on that 4th and 1, quarterback sneak early in the game, whatever it was. The Packers were almost not in the playoffs, and they were, inches away from beating the Niners and heading into an NFC championship game with Jordan Love's, first true season under center. So we'll see what they do. Rumors of, they want to make Jordan Love one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. We'll see. I think he's got one more year on his option. So exciting season for the Pack. Niners move on into the NFC championship game once again.
Yeah, this was a really good game. I mean, the Packers, you can say for majority of the game, they were the better team. That offense for Green Bay was, in the first couple quarters, it was clicking. I believe they came right out of halftime, got the ball, scored, drove down the field, against a very good San Francisco defense. I mean, they got a bunch of weapons out there in Green Bay, man. They got 2 tight ends. They got all those receivers, and Aaron Jones was back fully healthy, running all over San Francisco. So, that was nice to see. The future for Green Bay, I think, is really bright. But this game just came down to, the more experienced team capitalizing on mistakes early. Brock Purdy had a couple, mistakes, bad throws that, a couple of them could have been interceptions. Pick six dropped by Savage. I think Nixon dropped one a little later in the game. Well, whereas, Jordan Love, he makes a little mistake, like you mentioned, ball tipped up in the air. Dre Greenlaw, he's right there for the interception, capitalize on that takeaway. And then, at the end of the game, just throwing the ball, kind of like you mentioned, wishing for a prayer. And Jordan Love throwing another interception. So, I mean, yeah, you could mention the missed field goal. Packers felt like the best team majority of the game, but San Francisco 49ers and, like you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey. And Brock Purdy, he didn't have his best game. A lot of missed throws. Can't he grip the ball in the weather? Didn't really look like he, was that accurate in the elements. But, on that final drive when they needed to go down, when they needed to get points, Brock Purdy was good enough. He made some really good throws, and he made the plays they needed to make. Like you mentioned, he was a great game manager during that game when they needed him to. And all I'm going to say is, man, the Packers are a fun team. We watched that game together in person, and after the 49ers went down and scored, man, I believe, man, a little live bet on the Packers, man. I thought Jordan Love and that offense had a chance to go down and, take the lead and win the game. So, listen, if I'm live betting on a team, man, I really believe in them. And I think Jordan Love definitely is the future for Green Bay. I think that offense has a really, really bright future. I think Green Bay has a chance to be like, the Lions of the offseason. The last year, Lions just missed the playoffs. Everyone loves Detroit. They got this explosive offense, this and that, super young, fun team where I think coming in next year, the Packers are going to have a bunch of hype during the offseason, get some guys back healthy. But I just think, they are very, very deep in that receiver room. They got Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, who stepped up big, Jaden Reed. They got Wicks. They got Melton, a bunch of guys out there, and then the two rookie tight ends who stepped up. So Jordan Love got super, super better throughout this year. Really played, a strong end of the season, played great into the playoffs, torched Dallas, and had a solid game against San Francisco up to the very end. So if you're a Packers fan, I think, at this point, the rich just keep getting richer, man. I mean, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now it looks like Jordan Love is going to be another one of those franchise guys. But, yeah, I mean, all credit to the 49ers, man. I think at the end, it kind of looked like they were the more experienced team, and they just found a way to win. So you got to tip your cap to them.
Yeah, the experience is just capitalizing off those mistakes you mentioned. A live band, the Packers, man. We were really, it was jumping, man. We were trying to get a little pack rolling, man. See something different in that NFC Championship game this year. But the Niners, they go back, and we'll talk about their matchup with the Lions. Bucks Lions Sunday, got the ball rolling. I really don't know what to say about this game. Jared Goff, he handled business. Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't even know his name. The third string running back on the Lions scored a touchdown on that 4th and 1 at the goal line. Amon-Ra just being all reliable. I mean, you need him. Amon-Ra just shows up quietly. Silent killer. He does his job. That Lions defense, able to force some turnovers on Baker. Not going to say happy feet in the pocket, but we know how it is. When he sees that pressure, they got the scrambling. Dan Campbell was bringing some blitzes against the Bucks and really had Baker, making some poor decisions that he didn't make, for a majority of this season, I will say. Chauncey Gardner got that early pick. The only comment I really have is the Lovie Smith giving up that whole, end of the game. He didn't burn that timeout to force them to kick that field goal, whatnot, anything like that. But, great game by the Lions. The Bucks, they weren't really supposed to be here. A 9-win divisional winner in Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield sort of rewrites the script on his career as possibly, still being a starter in this league. So we'll see. Moving on.
Yeah, I think the Bucks put up a good fight, but I didn't. There was no way the Lions were losing, man. Back-to-back home playoff games after not having one in I don't know how many years. I know everyone's talking about that, but I mean, that Lions offense just looks really, really efficient, and defensively they're stepping up when they need to make plays. You mentioned they got C.J. Johnson back. He made a big play in the beginning, caught that interception, and I think the big story here for the Bucs, like you mentioned, Baker trying to rewrite his career. I think Baker and Mike Evans, two guys who really stepped up in this playoff game and pretty much all season. Two guys who were kind of written off. Mike Evans at the end of his career, does he still have it? Tom Brady's not there. Maybe he falls off a little bit. The Bucs not willing to pay him going into this season. Well, he's going to be a free agent, and he just had his 10th consecutive 1,000-yard season. Had a bunch of touchdowns this year. Mike Evans is definitely going to get paid. He balled out in the playoff game, the divisional playoff game as well. And then Baker Mayfield, man. I mean, you've had your experiences with him, ups and downs as a Cleveland Browns fan, but he definitely went in to Tampa Bay. Was in a quarterback battle with, who was it, Driscoll? Jeff Driscoll?
Was it, Kyle Trask?
Kyle Trask, yeah. Kyle Trask.
Wrong UF legend.
Yeah. So from that into the offseason and going into, actually winning the playoff game and, playing in the divisional round, I think Baker Mayfield has definitely earned himself a nice little payday. But this Lions team, I just think we're better on both fronts, and I think the right team won here. But a great story for the Bucs, team that fought hard. We made fun of their division all season, so it was cool to see the best team in that division make it, outside of the wild card round.
Chiefs Bills, the last divisional game. This one, I don't know how many times I need to say it, man. The Chiefs, they'll get the calls. NFL's not going to let the Chiefs lose on a call, so they're going to have to blow it themselves. And Chiefs-Bills came down to a wire, another instant classic in the AFC playoffs, just like every other year. This one, not so much, Patrick Mahomes torching. What was the score? It was in the 20s.
Yeah, I think it was 27, 24.
Yeah. So you look at it, Kelsey, getting in the end zone, finally kind of sort of looking like a, former previous years Travis Kelsey we are used to seeing at this point. Pacheco, he runs hard. Rashee Rice, he's trustworthy on the outside. He's becoming, Mahomes' favorite receiver to target. McCole Hardman trying to sell the game for the Chiefs, and they didn't do it. That fumble into the end zone, which I loved at the time, but I knew the Chiefs were going to win. Reminded me of that Rashad Higgins fumble into the end zone, no call, but whatever. As a Browns fan, that brought joy to my night, that's for sure. In the Bills, no Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir really stepped up in a big fashion. And then you just look, and it's Stephon Diggs, man. I think he had 8 targets, 2 catches, or whatever it was. Tough day for Diggs. And then once again, he's the laughing stock of the memes going around. Once again, losing to the Chiefs. What's going on in Buffalo? I think him and Shakir had the same amount of receiving yards, with Diggs having nearly double the amount of targets. I think it was 80 targets to Shakir's 40 over a certain span it was. But the Bills, they played a really great game. The Chiefs, once again, just too much Patrick Mahomes, just being Pat Mahomes. When they need it, makes a big play. Andy Reid dials up the right play call, and that defense stepped up when they needed it. And then once again, another missed kick, 40-some yarder in that Buffalo winner. That's got to be one of the hardest kicks to make, and tough for Tyler Bass being a kicker at this time of year in Buffalo. It really sucks, but once again, that's the draw of the card, man. It comes down to a kick, and that's sort of what brings the season to an end.
Yeah, this is just the classic big brother, little brother matchup. Throughout the entire game, the Chiefs, it seems like they had so many things go wrong for them. Like you mentioned, Mahomes wasn't even throwing the ball all over the field. Didn't have any crazy yards, although he was classic Patrick Mahomes. He's going to, take his shots here and there, but he protected the football. You mentioned the fumble for McCole Hardman on the goal line. But on the Bills side, Josh Allen, he fumbles the ball. They get a lucky bounce. They recover. Diggs just missed, that one catch down the field. I felt like it was a pretty even game throughout the game, but in the back of my head, I'm like, the Chiefs are just gonna win this. Like, I mean, the Bills, Josh Allen, he didn't make any like crazy plays. Got his legs going early, but then he kind of went away from it, and then it wasn't really the Josh Allen that we're so used to seeing. Him pushing the ball down the field, no matter what it is. I mean, that matchup, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, I mean, those are probably the two quarterbacks that the weather affects in the league the least. Like, I mean, both of those guys made some pretty impressive throws down the field, whether they were caught or not is, besides this fact. But two guys with, world-class elite arm talent, no matter, the conditions or whatever, they were making throws all over the field. You just maybe wanted to see, the Bills push the ball down the field a little bit more, see Josh Allen, take a couple more risks, especially in the playoffs. Like, I know Josh Allen gets a really bad rap. He turns the ball over. He's too risky, this and that. But, I mean, you're in the playoffs. This is literally when you want to risk it all. This is when you need the big play, the big knockout punch. And, they tried it there at the end with Diggs, but I just felt like it was too little too late. And then you mentioned the field goal, man. Watching the game, I was like, okay, if they make this field goal or whatever, I'm like, all right, first off, what would the score be? It just would have been tied. And second of all, Patrick Mahomes had like a minute 20 or a minute and some seconds left on the clock. I'm like, even if he does make it, I'd like just stop. I'm like, all right, he's gonna make this.
seconds all they need.
Yeah, I'm like, he's gonna make this, and then Mahomes is gonna go down and win. I'm like, all he needs is a field goal. Like, he doesn't even need a touchdown. The game's tied. It just felt like the Chiefs were gonna go down and win, and then he just ends up missing the field goal wide right. All the jokes and stuff like that, but it just felt like the Bills were right there, and once again, it just slipped out. But I think for the Buffalo Bills, it's very disappointing the way this season went. You wanted to win. Everyone's saying if you're going to beat the Chiefs, it's this year. But I think the Bills had an impressive season. From where they started, I think it was they had like a less than 9% chance to make the playoffs at one point. The way they rallied back, won the division, beat the Dolphins, showed a lot of grit, showed a lot of heart. The way they came back and made the playoffs. So I think you got to give the Bills some credit there. But ultimately, I mean, it's just tough right now. I just don't see how they're going to be able to get over that hump and beat these top AFC teams right now. Because even if they were to go in and beat the Chiefs, I don't know what they were going to do with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. So I think it's definitely the Ravens and the Chiefs are in a tier of their own right now, and the Bills are just on the outside looking in. But I think the Bills they're going to be competitive as long as they have Josh Allen. But like I said before on the last show, man, I can't bet against, Mahomes and Andy Reid, and I didn't want some bread. And I mean, it's the Chiefs, bro. As long as they have Patrick Mahomes, as long as they have Andy Reid, it's going to be tough to bet against them.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills did take those deep shots. They took one at Trent Sherfield. It was,
But they did.
They were conservative deep shot. I mean, it was
and
a
it was
third
towards
down.
the end of the game too. It was like in the fourth quarter. Like
they try to keep themselves in that game. Within striking, not make those turnovers to make the game. Sort of get out of hand, which it almost did after that one turnover. Is just McCole Hardman coughed it right back up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gonna move us AFC Championship game Sunday 3:30 maybe. Eastern time, Chiefs Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. Ravens hosting a playoff game here, a conference championship game. So you mentioned you're not betting against Mahomes. I'll let you take your pick, but I'm going with the Chiefs, man. I mean, LJ, terrific season, this and that. My heart and soul, I can't pick the Ravens. Even though I do think it's going to be a really close game, Patrick Mahomes, just looking at it, I mean, Tom Brady's not in the playoffs. There's two of his career playoff losses. The next one, Joe Burrow. So I guess the AFC North might have his number at this point. That's the only other quarterbacks that could beat him. Other than that, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's just gone to the Super Bowl every year he's been in the AFC Championship game, if not gone to the Super Bowl. Here, I don't see it any different, man. They found a way to beat the Bills. They found a way into the playoffs after this roller coaster of a season. The Ravens sort of been cruising, been that dominating, pulverizing team all year long. And I think the Chiefs, I wouldn't say sneak up because you're not taking them lightly, but I think they get it done on the road. I mean, it's going to be tough. You mentioned LJ, passing all year long, and then he comes out with that running the running school of Lamar Jackson in the divisional round, it's going to be tough to contain him. You're not going to be able to limit LJ all game long, but I think Patrick Mahomes, he's going to find a way to get it done. I think Travis Kelce can't have those drops he did in the wild card game against the Dolphins, because it was 4 or 5 drops he had. I think they get it done. Pacheco maybe take some pressure off the passing game, get the run game going, but against that Ravens team, I don't think it's going to be possible. I think it's going to be all Mahomes. I think the defense is going to make 1 or 2 big plays. L'Jarius Sneed, he's been balling of late. So, I mean, just give me the Chiefs on the road, the NFL, the script, the refs, whatever it is. Sorry for all real NFL fans, but we will be seeing Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl.
Listen, man, I just said if they got Mahomes and they got Andy Reid, I'm not betting against them. So, listen, give me the plus 3.5. But money line, man, I'm taking the Ravens, dog. I mean, I think when you look at this game, the way both teams are built, defensively, I think they're two very similar defenses, although I will tip my hat to Baltimore. I think their defense is going to be a little faster, a little more physical. They're flying around, but Chiefs' defense is a very, very solid unit. They have a very good defense. So I think, like you mentioned, it's going to come down to the offense. And Patrick Mahomes, when you look at that offense, they've had questions all season. Travis Kelce, he's looked like he's taken a step back. Although last week, found the end zone twice, got back going. And then when you look at the receivers, you got guys like McCole Hardman fumbling the ball through the end zone. Rashee Rice has kind of, only been the one to step up. MVS, we didn't talk about. He had a nice catch on that, in the fourth quarter for the Chiefs. He finally stepped up, but all season he's been hit or miss. Whereas when you look at the Ravens, I mean, what can you take away? Mark Andrews possibly coming back. He was practicing last week. It looks like he's on track to play. So you got tight ends over the middle of the field, Likely, who's, been an explosive, newcomer to this offense, rookie last year. He stepped up big time when Andrews was out. One of Lamar's favorite targets. He likes to target that tight end. So you bring Andrews back. Can you take them away? Well, then you look at the perimeter. Zay Flowers has been one of the best rookie receivers. Aguilar, we talked about last year. Listen, when he's playing good, he wins Super Bowls. So he stepped up. I think he even scored in the game last week. And then you got Odell. He has experience, not explosive, not who he used to be, but him, Rashad Bateman, Duvernay, they got some guys that can catch the ball. And then the run game, I mean, Dalvin Cook looked like he was back in Minnesota wearing that purple jersey, And then Lamar Jackson, his dynamic ability, if you do manage to take away all the weapons in the passing game, I mean, that means there's going to be no one spying or watching Lamar. And you saw what he was able to do last week, rush for 100 yards. I just think the Ravens have too many answers offensively. Running the ball between their running backs, you know what they do. They're going to have a solid run game. And then Lamar Jackson finally has viable passing options on the outside, and he still has all reliable Mark Andrews at Isaiah Likely. I just think, altogether, this unit offensively is just going to be a little too much. Whereas the Chiefs at this point, like outside of Mahomes, you can't really trust anybody. Offensive line has been spotty. The tackles, they've been up and down this entire season. That Baltimore pass rush, like we talked about, led the league in sacks. They're going to get after Mahomes. I just think the Ravens offensively have too many answers now. If there's anyone to do it, it'll be Patrick Mahomes. I just think the way the Ravens are playing, they're a little healthier, getting some guys back. I just think it's the Ravens' year this year. They're playing, this is the Super Bowl, I feel like. Whoever wins this game, I feel like compared to the NFC, I just think they're going to be better. And whoever wins this game, I think, will have a lot of confidence going into the Super Bowl. With that being said, the Ravens are the hot team right now. I just think they have a little bit more juice offensively. Both defenses are really good and kind of, even each other out. But the Ravens and Lamar, I just think, have 1 or 2 answers that the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, I think it's going to be one of those plays where he's looking down the field, MVS or Noah Gray just can't make the catch, and Mahomes put it right where he needed to, and, the team just doesn't come through for him. Whereas Lamar, I mean, pick a guy you want him to throw to. I have a lot more confidence, and then if he's not throwing it, Lamar and his legs can definitely get it done on the ground. So I think this is going to be a great game. 2 of the best quarterbacks playing right now. 2, former MVPs, current MVP and Lamar. this is going to be a great game, but give me the Ravens in an all-time classic playoff matchup.
Yeah. Don't be shocked, man. I think KT is gonna earn his way back onto the roster.
I didn't even mention Kadarius Toney. That's how much of a non-factor he's been.
Well, he hasn't been dressing out. That's why.
Exactly. He makes his biggest play of the year in the AFC Championship game. Hey, listen, against the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, he woke up.
There's anyone who knows about Kadarius Toney making plays.
It'd be an Eagles fan right
take
here.
A punt back.
Punt back, man. That little play at the end, so whatever it was. Something where he really didn't need to use his hands too much, but
yeah.
It's going to bring us to Sunday Night Football, man. Lions, Niners, and the Lions. Not sure when they won a Super Bowl, if ever. It doesn't even matter. This has been a long time coming for the Lions. Niners get right back to where they were last year, this time with the healthy quarterback last year. You mentioned CMC being that emergency QB, just running Wildcat at that point. Lions, Niners in San Fran, and I'm going to go ahead and rock with the Lions. The Niners are a better team from the top down. Deebo Samuel is going to be questionable heading into this game. I think that's going to be a huge factor for the 49ers. If I'm the Lions, I'm sending everything I got to stop that run and Christian McCaffrey. If you neutralize Christian McCaffrey, you got a legit chance of winning this game, and I know their secondary isn't the greatest. Brock Purdy, last week you mentioned he looked not too pretty out there on the field, made a lot of mistakes. The Packers couldn't capitalize. Well, I think if the Lions capitalize this week, they're going to be in the driver's seat to win this game. And on the other hand, they're able to run the football. I know the Niners got one of the best fronts in football. But if Jared Goff's able to make his plays and play how he's been playing, the past 2 weeks, I think the Lions could win this game. Amon-Ra on the outside. I mentioned Sam Laporta. I saw they just signed Zach Ertz to the practice squad. Don't think he'd be playing this week anyways, regardless of the factor. But I just think the Lions, man, it could be the storyline. The way the Niners played last week, they tried everything they could to lose that game, other than the defense. Well, Brock Purdy tried to lose the game because McCaffrey, he was running everywhere. He couldn't find Ayuk on the field. He was, a shell of what he's been this season. George Kittle as well. He wasn't hitting all his spots. He did his job game managing. You're going to need a little more than a game manager in an NFC Championship game. He's going to have to make some big throws. You mentioned that last drive. He was able to drive down the field, score that touchdown. I just think it's just stopping McCaffrey at this point for the Lions. And I think that's what Dan Campbell's reiterating in this locker room from the top down. And I think it's going to be a big day. You mentioned the 49ers' weakness was that secondary all season long. If that pass rush couldn't get there, you're able to beat their secondary. I think the Lions protect. I think Amon-Ra. I really think it's a Jameson Williams type day for the Lions. I think he goes nuts in the NFC Championship game. Whatever his over-under is at on the line, I might be hammering that over. So give me the Lions on the road. Both the road teams win the conference championship.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to this, the 49ers are just, right now, I believe they're a better team. So that's why I can just see them easily winning this. I mean, if they come out, pound the ball, Christian McCaffrey is just too much. Deebo, I think that is a very key part. I think Deebo being there is huge. But if not, you want to try to find a way to get Ayuk going. You want to get him the ball. He's been super explosive for them this year, a career year over there in San Francisco. And then Kittle over the middle, all reliable. He's kind of, talk about two great Iowa tight ends going at it, the rookie and the vet. I mean, two tight ends have just been, pivotal to their offensive success. I just think, 49ers, their defense, Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, they had a lackluster performance last week. Chase Young even, all these names that we think, should be coming out having huge games. They just didn't really have, the biggest game against the Packers. I think they're going to be a little motivated. They hear the noise, people saying, are they really as good as we think? Are they a little overrated? The Niners, I think, are just a better overall team, and I can definitely see them winning. But, I mean, I'm picking the Lions, bro. Like, I can't pick the 49ers, especially as an Eagles fan. everything the Niners have done,
Yes.
I think they have a chance to win. I think they're the better team, but I think even though the Packers lost last week, I think they definitely put a blueprint for the Lions out there to kind of move the ball and beat this 49ers team. And I think we see a lot of it. You mentioned that run game. Aaron Jones was able to get a lot of success out on the, outside of that defense, kind of running away from, the strength of the defense. Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, all those guys, Chase Young, all those guys on the defensive line. The Packers really tried to stretch that defensive line and get them moving laterally. Well, when you have Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the most explosive young backs in the league, you mix in David Montgomery, punch him in the mouth a little bit. What do the Lions do best? That offensive line is really, really good as well. So that's going to be 2 weeks in a row. That San Fran defensive line is going to be going up against, a great offensive line. They run block very well over there in Detroit. That's what they like to do, get Goff under center. What we saw Jordan Love do, get under center, get that run game going. And then you're going to be able to hit the play action shots. And, Goff won't be in the dome, but get him going and play action, get those linebackers biting up. Greenlaw and Warner have them, split second guessing. And then you mentioned over the middle, Laporta, he's been amazing. Amon-Ra, he's going to be good. And then Jameson Williams, I do think, that's one thing the Packers didn't have last week is, a true field stretcher. They have a lot of really good receivers, but none of them are as fast as Jameson Williams.
Not even
one of the fastest receivers in the league. Maybe Christian Watson, but, he was banged up. Yeah. Not fully 100%, whereas Jameson Williams, I think that you made a really good point. I think he'll definitely be able to stretch that field, and maybe they get 1 to 2 shots in. 49ers could easily win this game. I think they're the better team, but I'm picking Detroit Lions, man. I can't rock with the Niners. I can't.
You might have just made my night because I couldn't pick the Ravens. You can't pick that. Made my night, man. Yeah, and he's not playing in that dome. You mentioned Jared Goff, but it's San Francisco.
Yeah,
it might be a little breezy.
He'll be back in
bro,
Cali, bro. He's comfortable in California.
Yeah.
Went to college there, played for the Rams, so he'll be comfortable there in Cali.
Home for him.
Facts, yeah.
So and rewriting his storyline of his career, obviously getting to the Super Bowl, not being able to score a touchdown against the New England Patriots when he went, was that 2019, 2018 maybe? I think it was 2018, 19.
18,
right?
19, yeah.
Yeah. So he's looking to get back to that big game that he's, been trying. It's been, it's been 4 or 5 years now, so we're rooting for the Lions, man.
You got to check that weather forecast, too. If it's a little wet out there in San Fran, maybe, Brock Purdy,
his hands.
Now, Jared Goff is also not known to be,
exactly.
But a little more experience than Brock Purdy.
I did see some first overall pick versus the last overall pick matching up in the NFC Championship game. We're in for a good slate of games. And then obviously after this week, you got another week in between 2 weeks. Between the Super Bowl week, which is in Las Vegas. Did see something. They already got a little Chiefs welcoming sign at hotels in Vegas. I don't know if they were aware, bro, but NFL might have handed over the script. We'll see. I do want to say, shout out UCF men's basketball, man. They've been hooping. They might put on a little show in the March Madness tourney. I know you're rocking with them. Owls Nation over there. They've been, handling business. And then the Heat making some finally Sleepy Pat waking up, man. Scary Terry to Miami. I personally love it. I wanted DeJounte a little bit more, but you get an offensive bucket in Terry Rozier. I'm not going to argue with it. You dump Lowry, who's, outside of his leadership, you could say his defense, but it is not much coming from a point guard that's just being Kyle Lowry. I mean, I'm just happy. We get some offense at the point guard position. The position that was the biggest struggle this offseason, heading into the season, and then you watch the season unfold, and it's exactly how I thought. You gave Vincent Walk in free agency. After that, it was just Kyle Lowry, can Tyler play PG? Can Jay Rich play PG? Can Jimmy run the point? And you didn't have a true point guard. I know it's not a traditional point guard, but Terry Rozier has been handling it over there in Charlotte while LaMelo was out. He's been hooping. He's been putting up, I think, 25 plus a game in his last, 8 games or something like that. So next edition, thank you, Pat Riley, for finally making something shake. One of these years, I'm happy with that trade.
Yeah, I think Rozier is gonna fit in really well. I feel like he has that, that dog, that heat culture mentality. He'll fit right in, and also, don't forget, he started with Boston, man. He played for the Celtics, so I mean, when you look into the postseason, that Heat Celtics rivalry, maybe Rozier gives him a little edge. He's played against those guys, brings a little competitive edge. But like you mentioned, bro, the Heat just do this, bro. Like at the beginning of the season, everyone's injured, guys go in and out of rotation. They find a really good young guy. They bring him in, and Jaquez. Then around the trade deadline, All-Star break, they make a move here or there, and then the finals.
They usually don't make a move. If they do, it's like Cody Zeller,
or they're in rumors like the Heat could do this. Yeah, but I mean, towards the end of the season, everyone finally gets healthy. I mean, and then the Heat at this point, we just know they look to play for the playoffs. So I think it's nice to get Rozier in a little earlier, give him some time to gel, get that chemistry going with the team, and I mean, the East is crazy this season, bro. We just saw Embiid go for 70. The Celtics, just finally lost their first game at home against, Denver Nuggets, arguably the best team in the West. You look at the Bucks, they just fired their head coach, but I
can't believe that, bro.
But they're looking to bring in, I'm hearing Doc Rivers rumors. I mean, a coach with winning pedigree, has won in the league. You still have Giannis, who, is having arguably his best all-around season. He's passing and rebounding and still scoring. And Dame has been, he's Damian Lillard. He's going to shoot the ball. He's going to score. So even the Knicks, they're looking good. The Cavs are winning. But the Heat, I just think, the Heat are just going to be around, man. And then you add someone like Terry Rozier who can, definitely generate offense. Like you mentioned, he's not a traditional point guard, but he has experience. LaMelo's been out these last couple years. He's been the one handling the ball, making, all the reads and stuff. So I'm with you, man. I like the move for the Heat. Might want to look to add a little bit more depth, maybe bringing a big man or two behind Bam. But overall, I think the Heat, once they get everybody healthy, everybody playing together, I think they're going to be, one of the most competitive teams in the East.
I agree with you, man. Hopefully so. Once again, for the Heat, Terry Rozier, his Twitter, man, they put up some old tweets. A little Heat fan at heart, back in that D Wade era into the Big Three run. There's a lot of Heat tweets coming from Scary Terry, so he finally gets to join the Heat. Tweets will now be about him on Twitter. So shout out Terry Rozier, man. I'm excited to see what they can do this year, and now they finally get an offensive piece that, I mean, I've been asking for someone, that's going to be able to go get a bucket down the stretch when you need it. Who's your true scorer? I think he could really help, if it's not Jimmy or they're not going to Bam down low. They got Hero, now they got Rozier. All those guys can go get buckets when they need it. And it just adds another piece and be able to knock down big shots and big moments. And that's really what the Heat have been lacking these every run in the playoffs. They're good defensively. It's always been that offensive focal point.
It seems like they run out of gas on the offensive side.
Yeah, because Jimmy runs out of his gas and the offense just stops going. Hero, he's been out in the playoffs, and then you're relying on Bam, a center, to be able to go down and drop 30 every game. When he doesn't have the post ability of a Joel Embiid, even though we haven't seen Embiid in the playoffs really succeed too much, nonetheless, that's a whole nother story. But a great move for the Heat. You got any last comments, takes, NFL, NBA, anything?
That's pretty much it, man. Covered a lot to show.
Yep. Episode 75, Go to Go Pod on TikTok, Go to Go YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that. We'll be back next week with the results of the AFC and NFC Championships games, man. That's going to wrap up Go to Go episode 75. And until next week, man, peace.